I'm recording this on the same day that I've watched the movie because I gotta keep up with the hype train. Anyway, let's fucking go. Deadpool and Wolverine. Before I continue with the video, if you like movie and anime reviews, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It will really help me out. Anyway, back to the video. I don't know how to talk about this movie without getting into spoilers because even though the marketing material showed off a lot of stuff from the trailers to the TV spots, there's still a lot of stuff in this movie that is just left there for the audience to discover, and I've got to work around that in order to give this review. So Deadpool and Wolverine is the third movie in the Deadpool franchise, and Hugh Jackman reprises his role as Wolverine after he put down the claws post-Logan. And if you've seen the trailers, you'll see that it's basically Deadpool is celebrating his birthday with all the people he loves in the world, and the TVA come knocking. By the way, if you don't know the TVA, they're from the Loki TV series. You can go and check that out to know more about them, but you don't really need to know too much to follow this movie. So the TVA come knocking, and they basically want to recruit this Deadpool into the TVA, which is kind of like an allegory of folding this Deadpool into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and making him Marvel Jesus. But they also let him know that his timeline is dying because the anchor being for that timeline is dead. And they kind of tie that in with Logan because the anchor being for that timeline, for that particular universe, is the Wolverine from Logan. So now Deadpool has got to save his timeline, which contains all the people he loves, and the only way he can think of doing that is by getting another Wolverine to replace the one that died. And so he journeys through the multiverse to find a Wolverine that would fit. And as for the plot, that's all I can really say about it without going into spoiler territory. So now we have a film with Deadpool and Wolverine, and this might be the funniest movie I have seen this year. So we know that the MCU has a problem with comedy because they tend to insert it into places or timings where it does not belong, or it just doesn't land. And I've mentioned in my Guardians of the Galaxy review that if a character is inherently comedic, then it works. But the MCU keeps inserting comedy for non-comedic characters and makes it seem like they're quite unserious. But with Deadpool, you have a character that is inherently comedic and a character that is able to break the fourth wall completely. So that gives them leeway to just play around with so many jokes. And honestly, this is a massive step up from the previous Deadpool films in that regard, because Ryan Reynolds has just been given the massive MCU budget, and it shows. Like, they're giving him the budget and they're just taking off the reins and letting him go big and go wild and take big swings with the comedy and make as many references as he needs to. Like, you can see where the budget is going for this movie. And the swings he takes more than lands, because this movie had me laughing from the beginning. Like, it opens up on an action sequence, and throughout that action sequence, just in that sequence alone, you're laughing non-stop. It's a action sequence with comedic fights, but also a ton of references. Just Ryan Reynolds doing his Deadpool thing, like, to the max. And it's that opening scene that kind of hooks you into this movie, because you know you're in for an incredible good time and your eyes never leave the screen. Like, Ryan Reynolds really gets to go big with the jokes and the comedy and his references, and he delivers the Deadpool we want. And you know, Ryan Reynolds in recent movies, I've not been able to separate him from the character of Deadpool because he tends to be doing that Deadpool shtick in all his other movies, and it doesn't land in those movies. But here, when he is back as Deadpool, he is incredible. And speaking of incredible, we gotta talk about the other character whose name is in the title, and that's Wolverine. Hugh Jackman is back as Wolverine, and they finally give him a comic accurate suit. There is a ton of references to Wolverine's history in the comics in this movie. So if you're a big fan of that, there's just something there for you. Hugh Jackman delivers a great performance. It doesn't ever feel like he's phoning it in. In fact, what it feels like is that he is also having fun, along with Ryan Reynolds, along with the rest of the cast, and probably the crew. They're all having fun making this movie, and that fun emanates through the screen, and you're having a good time with this movie. Also, if you've seen some of the latest marketing material, like the final trailer, it kind of spoils a cameo that occurs in the movie, and there are several cameos such as that happens in the movie. And it's kind of strange to say this about a comedy, but this movie takes its cameos more seriously, like the cameo characters more seriously than Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness did. Like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness brought back Charles Xavier, they brought back Black Bolt, they even gave us that fan cast of John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, and then decided to kill them off unspectacularly, which showed a huge amount of disrespect towards these characters that fans have been wanting to see. And Deadpool and Wolverine, on the other hand, they bring in characters that fans are not actually expecting to see, and they treat them with the respect. Those characters are still there to serve comedic purposes at times, but never inappropriately, and they're treated with the deserved respect, which is really funny to say because Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is supposed to be a more serious action drama, whereas this is a flat-out superhero comedy, and it does that better than Doctor Strange. Now, while this movie is great, I did have one sticking point with it, and that is the villainess of this movie, which is Cassandra Nova, who in the comics is the twin sister of Charles Xavier. And that is because I think she still suffers from the Marvel problem with villains, where she's kind of wasted. Now, the villains in these latest two phases post-Endgame in the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been majorly hit and miss, whether it's in their Disney Plus projects or in their cinematic efforts. But I feel like Cassandra Nova is an okay villain. She's much better and plays a much more active role, I would say, than someone like Dar-Ben. But she's not as good as a character like Wenwu, which had real motivation for the things that he does. And I think she falls somewhere in between a Wenwu and like Namor as a villain, where I would rank them. And also for the third act, the way in which we get to the third act feels a little bit contrived. Like they didn't really know how to get there, and they just pulled something out of a hat to force a third act climax. But those complaints aside, this movie is incredible. Anyway, Deadpool and Wolverine might be the funniest movie I've seen this year. It is most definitely the most entertaining and the best time I've had in the cinema this year. And if you are a fan of the MCU who has been disillusioned by its latest projects, this is your chance to jump back in, because this is its best movie in years. Will it save the MCU? Well, it doesn't really have anything in the movie that will save the entirety of the MCU, because there is a mid-credit scene, there is a post-credit scene. The mid-credits usually set up future movies that will happen in the MCU, but this one didn't. It went for something a bit different. And the post-credits are the usual, gag shenanigans, and it's like the final joke of the movie. Anyway, I give Deadpool and Wolverine a 9 out of 10. Have you seen Deadpool and Wolverine? If you have, please let me know what you think in the comments below. Will this save the MCU? Is Deadpool Marvel Jesus? And I'll see you in the next video.